Hello! In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a ultra expressive eye, much like this one over here. This incorporates our eyebrows to make shocked faces as well as angry faces, and also uses physics and augmentation. So we're going to start off by just setting up our basic blink first. We're going to select our eye top, and then select Deform Path Edit, and all we're going to do is put some points across our mesh like so. So now we should have our line following our mesh. We're going to go back to the arrow tool. We're going to select our eye open and put 2 keyforms on there. We're going to set our keyform down to 0, and then we're going to go ahead and drag our points down to an eye closed position. Now it's important to note that when our eye is closed, it doesn't actually make this sort of shape. If you're going for a more cartoony character, then this might suit the character more, but for an anime style, we go for a slight bit more realism. So we actually want to pull down the corners a little bit. So it should look something like this. And as you can see, it opens and closes. Next we need to make the other parts of the eye match this motion. So we're going to select our side lash. We're also going to apply our Deform Path Edit to this one. Like so. Put 2 keyforms on our open. And when the eye is closed, we want our side lash to be on the inside of our top lash. Next we do the same with the eyelash bottom. We just want this to be slightly into the upper eye. So the bottom eyelid shouldn't move much at all. There's a little trick with our eye white. We can just squeeze down this red bounding box. Around about there. And then when it's in position, you can go to Modeling, Temporary Deform Tool, and then we're going to use a Temporary Path Deformation. We're going to put 3 points along this. We're just going to grab this point and fit it to our top eyelash. Like so. If your character has any eyeshadow, you're also going to need to do this with the blink. Let's go ahead and set those up. Okay, and all that we have left is our top eyelashes. And here's how we're going to set those up. So we're going to put our 2 keyforms on eye open. Much like with our eye white, we're going to grab the red box, but this time we're going to actually reverse it down. So you see our eyelashes are now pointing down rather than up. We're going to go ahead and move this down to where our eye is. Round about there. And once again, we're going to grab our Temporary Deform tool, Temporary Path Deformation. Let's put a couple points here. We're going to need to put it something like this. And this is going to completely depend on your eye shape. And we're just going to fit this back into our eye a little better. Like so. Let's go ahead and see how that looks. As you can see, our eyelashes are now changing their orientation to make a more realistic blink. So next we're going to go ahead and set up our eye smile. What we're going to do first is click on our eye open box here and press select. That's going to go ahead and select everything in our eye here that we have on our blink. Put our blink down to 0 and put 2 keyforms on our eye right smile. So for our closed eye smile, we can go ahead, go back to our favorite tool, the temporary path deformation. And we're just going to put our points across our eye again. And we're going to orient this into a smile, a happy eye. As you can see, it is affecting all of the art meshes, so we can do all of them at once and not worry about tweaking every single art mesh. Something like this. Another little thing that I like to do with the eye smile is actually just adjust our lashes back to the upward position. And then once again just tweak it back into the eyelashes. Like so. Next we're going to need to do our eye smile when our eye is open. We're mostly going to be focusing on the bottom of the eye here. Let's grab that one. And we're just going to tweak this up. Set the corners down a little. And then we're also going to need to edit our eye white here. We can actually just do this through the mesh. So just pull these up into the bounds of our eyelash. And then finally our eyeshadow, if you have any. There's a few more tweaks that you can do with the eye smile as well, but this is the basic way to get your eye to smile. So we're going to go ahead and select our eyebrow here. And we're going to need to do something real quick. We're going to right click our brow form, edit parameter, and change this into a blend shape. Next we're going to set 3 keyforms on this. And we're going to go ahead and set up our brow forms. So when brow form is at 1, we want our eyebrow to be in a surprise position. It's going to be raised a bit like this. And when it is in the -1 position, we want it to look kind of angry. So down like this. Like so. And here's where the magic happens. So we're going to make our eye actually follow our eyebrow. And this is where the expressive part comes in. We're going to go ahead and select our eye top, our eyelash, and your eyeshadow and eyelid if you have those. And we're going to set 3 keyforms on our new brow right form blend shape. We're going to set this to 1, and this is where we're going to have our surprised face. Go back to our path deformation. And we're going to whack some points on here again. And what we're going to do is lift up our eye some. Make sure the corner isn't poking out too much. Like so. So you can see our eye is now whoop, going up, surprised. And we're going to do something similar with our -1 on the form. Except this time we're going to push this down. So now it looks like we're making angry eyes. Next we'll need to tweak our eye white to make sure that it's following the eye shape. Go ahead and set 3 keyforms on our brow form again. And we're just going to pull up our mesh to make sure it follows the form of our eye. And as you can see, it now follows your eyebrows. So next we're going to set up some fancy eyeball physics. We're going to go ahead and create a new parameter. We're going to go ahead and call this iPhysics1, same with the ID. And we're going to set the minimum to -30 and the maximum to 30. We're going to go ahead and right-click that new parameter and replicate it. Edit that new parameter and just change the 1 to a 2. So we should have 2 iPhysics parameters now. So we're going to be applying physics to our iris as well as our highlight. We're going to go ahead and create a new warp deformer on our highlight and call this highlight physics, as well as our iris, and call this iris physics. We're going to select both of our new warp deformers and put 3 keyforms on both iPhysics1 and iPhysics2. We're going to start off by setting up our iris physics first. So on iPhysics1 at 30, we're going to drag out these middle points. And there's no set way to do this either. You can experiment a little. This is just how I like to do them. It's going to look like our eye is dilating. Maybe a little more out this way. And then do the opposite at -30. So for our iPhysics2, we want this to be a lot more subtle. What we're going to do is we're going to set our Bezier division number to 4 and 4. So we have way more points now to manipulate. We're going to go ahead and drag out our middle point. So this will mostly just be affecting our pupil. And similarly to the iPhysics1, we're going to drag these in. We can even use these top points here. Drag this in a little more. There we go. So when we're done with that, we're going to combine these, select them, and synthesize our corners. So now it should look a little like this. Next we're going to do our highlight physics. This is going to be very similar to our iris here, so I'm going to speed this up a little. That should be our iPhysics all set up now. So next we're going to go into modeling, and we're going to select physics settings, and we're going to add a new group. We're going to call this iPhysics, and leave the presets blank. We're going to go ahead and add our eye right open to our input. Set the effectiveness to 100. And we're going to add a couple of pendulums here. Go to our output settings, and then add our 2 new iPhysics parameters. Wait for a moment, and then increase output. It's already going to start working. I like to tweak these numbers just a little bit. I'm going to set the duration of our first pendulum to 8, our shaking of both to 0.89, our reaction time of both to 0.8, and the overall acceleration to 1.5. That's just going to make it a bit more smooth. Next we're going to set up our eyeball X and Y, but before we do our standard motions, we're actually going to set up a little bit of augmentation here. Go ahead and select your pupil and create a new warp deformer. We're going to call this pupil XY, as well as a new warp deformer above your highlight physics called highlight XY. We're going to create a new parameter, and we're going to call it eyeball aug X with a minimum of -1 and a maximum of 1. Go ahead and replicate this one too. Edit the parameter and just change the X to a Y. Go ahead and select your two new warp deformers, your highlight XY and pupil XY, and put 3 keyforms on the 2 new parameters that we just created. We'll come back to those in just a moment. Next, we're going to select our highlight XY and our iris physics and put a new warp deformer above them. We're going to call this eyeball XY, and this will be for our main motion. Go ahead and put 3 keyforms on your eyeball X and your eyeball Y. So these are your standard parameters. And we're going to go ahead and set those up first. So this is the standard setup. It's just going to be left, right, up and down. So now we should have our eyeball movement fully set up. Now we can look at those new parameters that we set up. So we're going to go ahead and select our pupil first. Now we're going to set this up alongside of our eyeball because those are going to be the inputs for our physics. We're going to go ahead and put our eyeball to the left here. And we're also going to set our eyeball aug X to -1, 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull the middle part of our warp deformer in towards the center of our eye. This is going to give us a greater sense of depth when we apply this to physics. Now we don't need to set up the other side ourselves. We can just go ahead and reflect our motion here. Make sure it's reflecting horizontally. And as you can see, it's just going to do it for you. We're going to do a similar thing with our eyeball Y. So when our eyeball is up and our eyeball aug Y is up at 1, we're going to pull this down towards the center of our eye. We can also reflect this here, but make sure to reflect it vertically. Go ahead and link those 2 parameters and synthesize the corners. So before we do anything with our highlight, we want to remove it from our eyeball XY warp deformer. It's going to be its own separate thing. So now when we move our eyeball, it's not going to move with it yet. For our eyeball aug X, we're going to set this to -1 here. And we're going to shift our highlight towards our eye here. They'll look a bit like this. And we are going to set this one up manually because depending on how your eye moves, you want to always make sure that your highlight is visible within your eyeball. So for this side, we're just going to put it around about here. And we're going to do something similarly for our augment Y. When our eyeball is up, we're just going to shift this up a little bit. Like I said, we don't want it going too far out of our eyeball. We want this to be visible. And down. Like so. Link those together and synthesize your corners. and it's going to look a little funky. Let's go ahead and open up our physics settings again. And we're going to need to add a new group. We're going to call this eyeball X. For our input, we're going to add our standard eyeball X, set the type to angle, and set the effectiveness to 100. We're going to change the normalization of input to -40 and 40. Add one pendulum. And then go to your output settings. We're going to add our eyeball Aug X to our output here. And then we're going to see that it is now reacting to our eyeball moving. Now these settings are very off here. We're going to tweak these a little. For the augmented eye, I like to have my shaking influence at 0.6 and keep everything the same. So now you can see it's just slightly slower than the actual eye. And I like to set the scale to 2. So now it's still reaching its maximum, but it's at a very slight delay. We're gonna go ahead and press duplicate on this one. Change your X to Y. And all we need to do is change our eyeball X to eyeball Y. And with our output, our eyeball Aug X to eyeball Aug Y. And then it will work with both X and Y. So now once you open it up in VTube Studio, you'll find that you'll have a super expressive eye that reacts to your eyebrows, as well as having that little bit of extra flair with the augmentation of your eyeballs. This example eye is also available as a completely free tutorial asset over on my Ko-Fi store. It also includes a few extra parameters that you may want to add, especially if you want to add things like eyelash physics, as well as how your eye reacts to mouth X by pushing up your eyes, as well as all of the basic setup that I just ran you through. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, it really helps out a lot. Give the video a like so you can come back to it easily. Comment down below if you liked the video, or if you have any suggestions about topics you'd like me to cover. Thank you for watching, and best of luck with your Live2D projects.